children, myself Divya Sharma from Shivjyoti Educational Group Kota. Today we will be studying chapter number 18 in your social studies, that is British Raj and the First War of Independence. So take out your books, Getting Ahead in Social Studies, page number 135. Now children, over the last 1000 years or so, India has seen many different rulers. And today we are going to focus on a very important period of Indian history, that is the British Raj and the First War of Independence. The British Raj, which was the rule by the British Crown on India from 1858 to 1947, and Raj means rule. Here you can see the timeline. Around 1450, India was called Sone ki Chiriya as it was a very rich country. Then around 1500, Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese trader, found a sea route to India. 1600, East India Company was formed. Around 1700, there was a decline in the Mughal Empire due to the emergence of the small kingdoms which started fighting amongst each other. And in 1757, Battle of Plassey was fought, which was the first victory of the British. Then 1760 was the era of Industrial Revolution, which was the significant change from handmade goods to the machine-made goods. And at this time, Britain was prospering a lot. Then in 1857, Revolt of 1857, which is also called the First War of Independence. It was due to the frustration and anger among the Indians, which led to the revolt of 1857. And finally, in the year 1858, Crown rule was instituted, or we can say the British Raj. India came under complete control of the British. Now, as I told you, India was called the Sone ki Chiriya because it was very famous and rich country, and we had lot of spices, silk, pearls, gold coins and gold jewelry. Therefore, India was called the Sone ki Chiriya. And during these prosperous times, India traded with the Arab traders and with the European traders. And also at the end of the 15th century, a Portuguese trader named Vasco da Gama found a sea route to India. The Portuguese started trading with India mainly for spices, and then they were followed by the Dutch, French and British, who started trading with India. However, each wanted a monopoly over this trade. Each one of them wanted to have more control over the land. They wanted more and more land, and also they started fighting against each other, and finally the British defeated the others and East India Company was formed in the year 1600. Here you have your first internal question, that is, who formed the English East India Company? The answer is the British. They bought mainly spices and textiles from the Indian traders. They bought mainly spices and textiles. They were only concerned about trading. Then what happened? The wealth taken back to Britain by the traders of East India Company was used to fund the Industrial Revolution in Britain. The British now needed a steady supply of raw materials for their factories. They also needed a market to sell the goods being made by the factories. Now, whatever goods the British people were making, they wanted more and more raw materials for that. They wanted continuous supply of raw materials, and also they needed a market so that they can sell the goods which were being produced. And soon the British were not content with being mere traders in India, and they were not satisfied just being small traders in India. And what happened, around 250 years ago, the Mughal Empire in India had started declining. Several regional kingdoms emerged. Around 250 years ago, Mughal Empire started declining. And why it declined? Because several small regional kingdoms which were ruling the small towns, they started emerging and they started fighting amongst themselves. And what happened? Due to the fights, this was the first stage of conquest by the British. The British took advantage of their fights, and this was the first victory of the British, which was the Battle of Plassey, which was fought in the year 1757, wherein Lord Robert Clive defeated the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Daulah. Now, due to the discontent among the Indians, the officers of East India Company, they were using unfair means to get rich. And so there was lot of anger and discontent among the Indians. Farmers were forced to grow indigo and cotton. British bought these raw materials at a very low price. Now, British used to buy the raw materials at a very low price, and what happened? As a result, farmers were suffering and they were becoming poor, and the British were making huge profits. The milk cloth made by the British industries was also sold in India. So they were benefiting from both the ends, but the Indian farmers and the workers were suffering. This was cheaper and of better quality than the cloth made by the local weavers. Now, whatever clothes were made in the mill, they were cheaper and of better quality than the clothes which were made by the local weavers. And this was the era of the Industrial Revolution, wherein Britain was growing and prospering. They were becoming rich, and raw materials were shipped to Britain, which they were buying from the Indians. Cloth made in British mills was sold in Indian markets. The Indian handloom industry and artisans suffered. And the British made unjust laws through which they can control over more and more kingdoms in India. And one of such law was that if the ruler died without a child, the throne goes to the East India Company. This was one of the unjust law which was made by the British. And many Indian farmers and workers, rulers were dissatisfied with the British rule. From farmers to workers to kings, no Indian could prosper and lead a free, independent life. Now we will talk about the revolt of 1857. Due to the dissatisfaction of the Indian farmers, rulers and traders, whenever this kind of situation arises, this anger, frustration and discontent among the Indians, this gave to uprising of revolt. And that was the revolt of 1857, which is also called the First War of Independence, which was caused by the frustration and anger with the British. Now, the revolt of 1857, which is also called the First War of Independence, before the revolt could start, there was several months of tension among the Indian soldiers. Now, why there was tension among the Indian soldiers? Because of the rifles which they have to use. That was Lee Enfield rifle, and it was a rumor that these rifles are loaded with the cows and pigs meat. They have to bite off the ends of the cartridges before using them, and these were greased with the fat of the cows and pigs, and Hindus regarded cows as sacred and Muslims regarded pigs as unclean. So they were very angry. And this further, on 29 March 1857, Indian soldier Mangal Pandey attacked the British officer, and there was widespread discontent and anger among the Indian soldiers when Mangal Pandey was hanged to death on 8th April 1857. Then Indian soldiers at Meerut shot down their officers and took over Meerut. They were very angry, and the revolt of 1857 was led by Bahadur Shah Zafar. And some of the prominent leaders, some of the important leaders of the revolt were Tantia Tope, Nana Sahib, Rani Lakshmi Bai and Begum Hazrat Mahal. But the British had superior weapons and greater military strength, so they were able to crush the revolt of 1857. With their mighty military strength, British were finally able to crush the first war of independence. And in 1858, the British government decided to take India under its direct control, and here the rule of the British East India Company got over. It came to an end. And the crown rule, which started from 1858 till 1947, Queen Victoria receiving the crown of India. Here you can see the crown rule went to Queen Victoria. She was proclaimed Empress of India in the year 1876, and from here the British Raj was instituted and India came under direct rule of the British. Though the revolt was a failure, but Indians were inspired by the bravery of the soldiers who fought against the British, and they also realized the importance of independence, and they also realized that if they become united, they can easily fight against the British and gain independence. This was all about the explanation of the chapter, children. Now I will be discussing the book work and the copy work. Question number A, fill in the blanks. The first European to find a sea route to India was Vasco da Gama. The British became very powerful in Bengal after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. The revolt of 1857 started in the city of Meerut. Bahadur Shah Zafar was declared the leader of the 1857 revolt. He led the revolt of 1857. The British government took over the control of India from the East India Company. Now we will discuss question number B. Write true and false for the sentences. On his first trip to India, Vasco da Gama landed in the city of Calcutta. The sentence is false. The British bought cheap raw materials from Indians and sold them as finished goods at high prices. The sentence is true. India became independent from British rule after the rule of East India Company ended. It's false. The British were able to take control of India because the rulers were always fighting among themselves. The sentence is true. The revolt of 1857 was the first war of independence fought by the Indians. That is true. Now I will discuss multiple choice questions. Which of these countries traded with India about 500 years ago? The answer is B, Portugal. One of the main items the European traders bought from India was spices. So C is the correct answer. The Indian soldier who started the revolt against the British was Mangal Pandey. So option D is correct. The Mughal emperor who participated in the first war of independence was Bahadur Shah Zafar. Who did the British defeat in the Battle of Plassey? Correct option is D, that is Siraj-ud-Dawla. Now I will discuss the question answers with you. Which European country was the first to start trade with India? The Portuguese were the first to start trade with India. Name 3 other European countries that started trading with India. Other European countries that started trading with India were France, Britain and Dutch. As we read that after the Portuguese, the other European countries which followed them were France, Britain and Dutch. Why did the countries trading with India fight among themselves? Who finally won the fight? Each of the country trading with India wanted a larger share of the trade, so they fought among themselves. In the end, the British won the fight. Now, the countries which were trading with India, they started fighting amongst themselves for getting the larger share of land, and in the end what happened? British won the fight. They defeated them all. Why were the British able to crush the revolt of 1857? The British had superior weapons and greater military strength. Many Indians also sided with British. That's why British were able to crush the revolt of 1857. Now, due to the superior weapons, good weapons and a lot of military strength, and many Indians also were on side of the British people, that is why they were easily able to crush the revolt of 1857. What gave the British an opportunity to start gaining control over India? The British took advantage of the weakness of the Mughal Empire and the fights among the several regional kingdoms and started gaining control over India. Now, how did the British people get the opportunity to start gaining control, more control over India? Due to when the Mughal Empire started declining and small kingdoms emerged, they started fighting amongst each other. And the British took advantage of their fights and they started gaining control over India. Give one example of an unjust law made by the British to take over kingdoms in India. British made many unjust laws, and one of laws said that if a ruler died without a child, his kingdom would be taken over by the British. One of the unjust laws said that if the king died without a child, the throne will be given to the British. Why were the Indian soldiers unhappy with the new rifles? A rumor spread among the soldiers that the cartridges of the new rifles were greased with the fat of cows and pigs, and to use these cartridges they had to bite the end. This angered both the Hindus and the Muslims because the Hindus regard the cows as sacred and the Muslims regard pigs as unclean. This made Indian soldiers unhappy. As we read that before the revolt of 1857 started, there was lot of tension among the soldiers, as there was a rumor which was spreading that the cartridges which they had to use, they were greased with the fat of cows and pigs, and Hindus regarded cows as sacred and Muslims regarded pigs as unclean. So there was lot of anger among the Indian soldiers. Explain why the Industrial Revolution in Britain was bad for the weavers in India. The Industrial Revolution in Britain was bad for the weavers in India because the cloth made by the British industries was cheaper and of better quality than the cloth made by the local weavers. So people bought the mill cloth and the Indian handloom industry suffered. As I told you, Industrial Revolution was the era wherein Britain was prospering and gaining lot of wealth. But it was bad for the Indian weavers because the cloth which was made in the mills, that was cheaper and of better qualities than the clothes which were being made by the local weavers. So Indian handloom industry suffered a lot. This was all about the copy work, children. Go through the video, do your copy work and book work very neatly and read the chapter. Thank you.